Show another good valid option on the two-way radio world. We've been talking a lot on my channel about the Baofeng UV3R. James Yeager talks about it in his forums, and other people talk about them in their other forums. There is other Baofeng models which are good valid radios. There's a couple of single channel type radios that get programmed at a master computer, and then they stay on just one channel. Those are really good for business band usage and stuff where you don't fully trust everybody you're using radios with, but you need to communicate with them. Job site communication, good choice on that one. Another middling choice, and it's not whether one is better than the other, but whether it's more appropriate for the particular usage or the particular mission, is the Baofeng UV3R series. Now, there's a UV3R, very similar to this radio right here, and then there's the UV3R Plus. Now, the UV3R Plus is going to be the focus of this short set of videos. The UV3R Plus is only around $30 from Amazon.com. Not a particularly popular radio, so they sell them for a low price. The UV3R Plus doesn't go up to the 520 megahertz the way, let's say, the 5R Plus, but also realize you are very unlikely to be using those frequencies over the 480, and they are outside of the licensed ham bands for the most part. So on normal ham bands, normal licensable bands and business bands, this radio is going to be just fine. It also will work on a number of municipal bands, but doesn't do the frequency hopping stuff the way, let's say, a police radio would. But if you are working with a sub-department of a municipality, such as Parks and Recreation, doing volunteer work, something like that, this radio is going to be just fine for that. And the other big advantage of this type of radio is its charging system, but you need to understand that its charging system is USB based. It is not an outright USB charging system, but it is USB based. So the extended batteries that are available for the UV3R, those sorts of things, are not available for this radio. It's not as popular, so there's not as many proprietary accessories, but it is compatible with a lot of other really cool gadgets that you would normally only see available for cell phones or maybe the small tablet computers, most of which deal with power management and being USB compatible as far as a charging plug goes. It's such an important issue, it's going to be its own little segment coming up here. Showing the radio with the contents of the package. It came with the radio, came with the battery, came with the antenna. You screw that on, you're done. Okay, you got obviously you got the radio. The chassis is metal. Okay, it's plastic covered metal, so it is a metal chassis radio. You get a charging base, which you must use with the UV3R Plus, but the charging base is not necessary or included with the common UV3Rs, though they do have a charging base of sorts for several of them. The way the charging base would work is not as practical as simply putting a little plug into the side of the radio. But on a UV3R Plus, you must use the charging base. More on that in a few minutes. The thing is that what you end up with here is a USB conversion wall wart, very similar to what you would see with a lot of their little tablet computers, spy cameras, all of that kind of stuff. What it means is that if you're having to carry your charging package around, you don't need to carry multiple copies of this. This is one of the big differences between the UV3R and the 3R Plus. The UV3R has this where the cable does the same thing, has the same polarity and voltage, but it's built on. There is not a separatable USB. You have to buy the Plus model to be able to get this cable, and that extra cable does come with it. Okay, there's a lot of accessories that come with this which don't come with the other models. Now, with this accessory USB cable, here's what's interesting. Now, this is still a UV3R series radio. All the buttons and levers are in the same place as you would find on a UV3R, or what some other manufacturers might call the UV300 or 100. But what happens is the battery is in its own little removable case, and the battery can be recharged separate from the radio, whereas on the slightly smaller UV3R, the battery is internal to the radio. It is removable. It's basically a cell phone battery, but you have to have the entire radio on the charger in order to recharge it. With this, you can separate the battery from the radio, and the battery alone will go into the charging cradle. So you could, in theory, hot swap batteries if you have a spare battery. The other thing they've done, because the radios built on this chassis are sold through a few different companies, is that they went with a Motorola 2-pin plug as far as your interface goes for your talk and your microphone. Okay, so it comes with a little earpiece mic, again, for free. Comes with a radio, a nice little thing. Has its own push-to-talk button here. Although I'm not going to transmit anything on these frequencies because I just turned the radio on and that's what was there. One of the cool things, though, is if you have one of these USB solar-powered battery banks, well, guess what? You again may not be really needing to keep one of these around. It just, anything that has USB output, which is getting more and more common in vehicles. There's even wall outlets now that are just a USB wall outlet where the USB power converter is built into the outlet. So what happens is we have reduced and uncomplicated some of our charging puzzle here. And this is what you would be using to recharge the UV3R Plus. Now, it does come with a belt clip. I suggest not installing it and just carrying a radio in a pocket. This clip isn't really going to hang on to things all that well, and it might give you a false sense of security in making you think that you won't be losing your radio. So I suggest not using the belt clip. Although it's a nice belt clip and it installs in a relatively secure fashion. But you still have a little issue here in that you do need to keep the charging base around in order to charge the radio. There's no way to plug this battery in and make that work without using the charging base. So that's one of the reasons the radio wasn't very popular, is this thing has to stick around. But if you use one of the models that doesn't really require the charging base, then this is all you need to stay up and running off-grid, is that you can combine parts from the two radio kits in addition to one of these little USB solar charged battery banks from Banggood, and this is a complete sustainable radio kit. You can simply extend out your cord, put this thing in the sun, and keep the radio charged at a rate that's only going to be slightly slower than you're transmitting. But also there's going to be some variables in that of whether you're charging at in full sunlight or whether you're transmitting at high power or low power. Because remember, these are a relatively small battery, although they are lithium-ion batteries in these radios. If you're transmitting at full power, you're transmitting at much higher power than the cell phones transmit at. Therefore, it eats batteries. Okay, it's going to eat batteries. This is one of the ways you can keep that thing up and running. It's also a good reason to add a UV3R Plus to your inventory lineup, even though you may not be using the UV3R Plus for all of your radios. In fact, I would suggest maybe even getting both. Okay, I actually have two of one of the other. This can be a standalone radio because obviously the other two radios act as backups to that situation. But if I'm heading out for an extended thing in the field and I don't necessarily want to carry all of the other charging hardware with me, I know that one of these things can act as a backup battery for the radio, since I can tie some of this stuff together, but not with the UV3R Plus. I have to carry this around. So it's a little bit of a mix match type of situation, but it can work. And so this is the Baofeng UV3R Plus, and of course the Baofeng UV3R. This is a radio very similar to it, uses the same chassis, but it has some other features I'm not going to detail in the video. But the UV3R Plus, again, if you're going to go in a field and operate like this, you will need to bring that charging base along, but it's still not a half bad way to go. If you want to leave the charging base at home and save a little bit of weight and encumbrance and go with a little bit more compact stuff, you can do this. And a lot of this is because there's a key item that comes with the UV3R Plus, which doesn't seem to come with these other radios, which is the USB based charging cord. One little warning about this: this is a reverse polarity cord, so if you have cell phones or other devices that use a plug that looks like this, it will not be compatible. The vast majority of barrel type plugs, which is what this we would call this, the center is the positive and the outer ring is the negative. On this particular setup, the outer ring is positive and the inner ring is negative. Did I say that wrong last time? Okay, we're going to say this again. On this type of radio, that inner little circle goes to your ground or your negative pin. The outer ring is your positive. That is exactly the opposite of what other users of this type of plug use. So you got to be careful not to mix them up, or else you'll have a reverse polarity. The USB, on the other hand, is self-correcting. So if we plug this into here and then plug the radio into, well, maybe I flipped that upside down. So if we plug this into here and we plug the radio into that, then what effectively happens is we've quadrupled our battery capacity, because we're using this solar-powered battery bank, which does have its own recharge capability, to make that work.